The last 24 hours in the crypto market have been absolutely brutal, especially if you FOMO'd at the top, bought in at 124,000. You're probably crying yourself a little bit to sleep right now, maybe going to bed early. But that said, we're going to talk about, was all of this a major overreaction? What were the three contributing factors that caused this massive dump? Why it actually kind of made sense? And will the meeting between Trump and Putin tomorrow in Alaska, which kind of is funny, U.S. bought Alaska from Russia not too long ago, well, maybe a little long ago, but either way, a meeting that could have huge impacts on the entire crypto market. All that and more in today's video. If you're new here, my name is Alex, provide you daily crypto updates. You're always in the know of what is happening in the crypto space, so you can always make the most informed decisions. If you enjoy content like that, consider subscribing. If you enjoyed this video, smash up the like. Without further ado, I'll let you into the video. So there's some pretty bad inflation news that came out earlier this morning that has caused the entire crypto market to crumble. It has really, and what is kind of crazy to me in regards to all of this is when you take a look at the number one, or I wouldn't say maybe the number one indicator, but the number one thing that a lot of people look at as far as prediction models for a Fed rate cut, it is very much not any worse than how things were before all of this exactly a week ago. So we're going to look at that in just a second. But as you can see, the entire crypto market, market cap overall is down 4.5%. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars wiped off the board when it comes to crypto. The value of the entire market was at 1.4.2 trillion. It is sitting at 3.9. So $300 billion worth of overall of the entire market wiped out in just literally 24 hours. So markets move fast. It is crazy, but this was the leading driver of this coming out. So PII inflation 3.7% versus 2.9% expected. So this wasn't a slight miss. This was a huge miss. This wasn't 2.9 and it came in at 3, or this wasn't 2.9 and it came in at 3.1. This is almost a whole percentage point off. This is a huge disaster in this instance. And that is why there was such a mass overreaction in the market. And the previous month was only at 2.6%. So it's just saying, hey, core inflation is essentially going up. Now, what does this mean? Inflation going up, there is a less higher likelihood, if you think about it that way, of a rate cut. And so the percentage, as we'll look at in just a second, of a rate cut happening in September dropped. And the small drop, even though it was very insignificant, caused $1 billion worth of loss in the crypto market. So it's crazy to think that such a small, minute detail could be such a factor. Now, on top of all of this, you had, which by the way, Fed Chair Jerome Powell is going to be talking next week. This is going to be a huge catalyst as far as the Fed's policy framework. This is going to be something that, as we saw with the last announcement, with the decision of the rate cut, the more recent announcement, the markets react very strongly, whether to the good side or the bad side of the news that comes out predicting if there's going to be a rate cut. There's really 99% of the market right now. The direction it goes is dependent on Fed Chair Powell. It's really where things are right now. No matter how much is bought up by institutions, no matter how much bullishness there is in the crypto policy, if Fed Chair Powell says no rate cut, you can expect a huge drop. If Fed Chair Powell says we're going to do 25 basis points, you're going to see Bitcoin at all-time highs. It's just the swing of things right now with the entire market. So to add fuel to the fire of what happened later in the morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the U.S. will not be buying any Bitcoin. So listen to this.
holding. I doubt we're going to revalue it, but we are going to keep it there, again, as a store of value for the American people. We've also started to get into the 21st century, a Bitcoin strategic reserve. We're not going to be buying that, but we are going to use confiscated assets and continue to build that up. We're going to stop selling that. I believe that Bitcoin reserve at today's prices is somewhere between 15 and 20 billion.
So essentially, the U.S. government is saying we're going to keep the Bitcoin that we have, which was kind of already known. This isn't anything new necessarily, but you now have the Treasury Secretary coming out on Fox Business saying we will not be buying any Bitcoin, right? So you have not only is the inflation data bad, now you have the U.S. government saying, hey, we're not going to be buying any Bitcoin. We're just going to keep what we have. And it kind of freaked some people out. I mean, if you were there in Bitcoin Nashville, I think it was last year, when Trump spoke at the Bitcoin conference, that was kind of already, expressed. There was already talked about the big thing that Trump had mentioned is that they were going to hold the Bitcoin that had been acquired, but there weren't any plans to add a substantial amount of Bitcoin on a periodic cycle or scheduled cycle or anything like that. So this isn't necessarily new news, but it came from the new Treasury Secretary at a pretty bad time. So, I think everyone kind of had this hope that, the U.S. government is going to actually buy Bitcoin. What Trump said, eventually they'll kind of add to it outside of what we already have. This kind of just dashed the hopes, which ironically, he went back on, not too long after. This is, 3:46 p.m., saying that Bitcoin that has been finally forfeited to the federal government will be the foundation of the strategic Bitcoin reserve that President Trump established in his March executive order. Because if you remember the executive order, it didn't mention anything about buying more Bitcoin, right? In addition, Treasury is committed to exploring budget-neutral pathways to acquire more Bitcoin to expand the reserves and to execute on the president's promise to make the United States the Bitcoin superpower of the world. So here's the bigger question, right? Is what does budget neutral actually mean? Because ironically, the United States is in debt, right? Yeah, I mean, there's $37 trillion worth of debt, operating the GDP at a deficit. So to say we're going to do something budget neutral, you don't have any money in the budget to buy Bitcoin. You're literally running negative every single month. So how are you going to explore budget neutral pathways to acquire more Bitcoin when you don't literally have a budget to even work with because you run negative every single month? So it's not even neutral. So that's kind of like the unknown. Yeah, this was great. Massive if true from Wolf Crypto. I would say this very same thing. This is massive if true. But what does budget neutral even mean? This is extremely vague. So is it money that the U.S. makes from tariffs? Maybe that's a way for the U.S. to take a portion of what they make from tariffs, to be able to onboard. Maybe it's from trade. I mean, there's so many questions as to what is the budget. There's budgets for many things, right? So this is kind of the unknown. It's great. I think that there's enough positive in this to realize they want to accumulate more Bitcoin. But it's not going to be just random $100 billion worth of Bitcoin at a time, right, per scoop. So it is going to be very strategic in how this is done. I think this is going to be very interesting. And it essentially opens the door to say we'll acquire more Bitcoin, but it keeps the door wide open and no questions answered. It keeps the water very muddy. It keeps the whole color very gray. It just does really nothing other than say, we'll potentially buy more Bitcoin to add to the reserve. It's not only the reserve. So this kind of gives when you have people that when something's almost impossible, and I was like, well, it's impossible. Is there any chance of it happening? And like, oh yeah, there's a chance. So you're saying there's a chance, right? So you're saying there's a possibility, and that's really all it is. You're saying there's a chance that the U.S. will buy Bitcoin. It's really all it is. So let's take a look at where the candles line up, because right now, things don't look all too great. I wanted to look at a few different timelines to kind of showcase this on a 1 hour. We broke down below the 200 exponential moving day average. We try to reclaim it actually right here. But I think you have to zoom in really, really closely. And I think this is why it was kind of bearish, is because this candle right here it was not a very solid green candle as far as bouncing back up, right? So you already had a massive, massive drawdown. I mean, this is from, I think right here is when the news popped, right? This was the bad news popping right here. So in 1 hour, the entire Bitcoin market dropped 3%, right? So we kind of retraced that a little bit right here, but we still closed a red candle. We opened this one green, but it wasn't anything strong. It was nothing, this was not a very strong candle. And that's kind of where everything else started kind of going a little bit sideways. So, I think right now, if this candle closed green, it was a lot stronger. I think we could have very much bounced off of here and gone back to 120K. Because I think this was essentially just a way, and maybe not pre-planned, but this was simply just a getting rid of, one, you had to have a correction. You already had an all-time high right here, so you were going to have to correct anyways. I think a correction down to 120K was going to be very reasonable, even to this range right here where we've seen a lot of resistance support, 118 to 119,000. And so to see the drop all the way down to 117K, I don't think was expected, and I think it was primarily driven by the news. And so when you take a look at maybe a different type of model, right, even when you look at the 4 hour, right, the 4 hour, we're kind of resting here on the 100-day exponential moving average. Pretty strong level of support right here. On a longer timeline, if we retain and stay above this, maybe even turn this green, that could be very, very good for Bitcoin. We can maybe see a move back to 120K. But even on the daily, because people are freaking out right now, what essentially has happened is we've lost the gains from the prior 2 days. That's all that's happened. In 1 day, we've lost gains from the prior 2 days. But everyone wants to act like the entire bull market is over. We need to pack up and go home. And I realize I rage bait a little bit when I post on X saying, it's been a fun cycle. I'll see you guys in 4 years. But in the end, I think this is so small in scale. I mean, look at this, right? We've seen way, way worse, right? When we dropped from when we went up here and we hit 112K, this, in many ways, this right here, we hit all-time highs, right? We corrected, and mind you, this is a daily chart, so just be mindful of that. We corrected pretty hard. And what happened after? We had some slight sideways trading. I mean, this is over a period, this is the 22nd of May, and this was a month and a half later, we're back to new all-time highs. So people are freaking out, but think about this, right? We're midway through August. September 13th, September 14th is the next potential rate cut, if that's going to happen. We've got about a month. So we're setting ourselves up, I think, in a very, very good position. We saw an all-time high. We saw a major correction, right? All-time high, we see a major correction. I think we could be a little bit sideways. I think this trend line is going to continue going up. And I think September comes along, we're up here to 125 to 140, maybe $150,000 Bitcoin if we get a Fed rate cut. So when you take a look at some other things, also I just want to pull up ETH real quick. People are freaking. ETH is so far above where it really should be. I mean, ETH was all the way up here at 4,800. I mean, this small correction, this is on a daily chart, doesn't even have Bitcoin back to its 20-day exponential moving average. I mean, Ethereum has has been extremely strong. I mean, it's not down, like Bitcoin was down to its lower moving averages. Ethereum's not even close to those. So Ethereum has remained very strong. You saw BlackRock, I think it was BlackRock, buying out $500 million worth of ETH early this morning. There's just a lot of very, very strong momentum on that front. And I think when you take a look at liquidations, right, there's everything that could have been really liquidated has been kind of liquidated. So I think more short sellers are probably going to be covering their shorts. They're going to be buying back. And I think we're going to maybe see some sideways until we get some news potentially tomorrow. We're going to talk about that in a second. But we got some bigger things happening next week, right? Fed Chair Powell is going to talk. So, in the next week, we could see a further correction. I think in a worst case scenario, look at Bitcoin on a maybe larger scale. We'll go down to 116K. I think in a very, very worst case scenario, and this is even on the daily, I don't think we're going to go down here. Even back here when we dropped to 112K, we stayed on, this is the 50-day moving average, right? So even if we go down here, this would be about 115,000. I think 115,000 would be fantastic entry opportunity. But I think realistically, even if you get in here at 116K, you're doing yourself a favor. It's pretty good overall entry if you've been kind of on the sidelines a little bit. So liquidations, like I said, not a whole lot. The probability of a rate cut, I'm going to just refresh this real quick, see if we've had any major changes since I started recording this. But this is what everybody was freaking out about, right? There's a 92% chance, September 17th, 92% chance there's going to be a rate cut of 25 basis points come the 17th of September. Now, this changed by 2 percentage points from a day ago. 2 percentage points equals $1 billion loss in the entire crypto market. That is just insane how crazy numbers like that work. I mean, even look at this. The likelihood is still higher from a week ago, right? This is from a week ago that, we had 91.9% and it's 92.1%, right? So this is still higher from a week ago, August 7th. So people are very much overreacting, but I think it was a perfect storm. It couldn't have been timed any better. All-time high, a correction's coming. You knew that the inflation data, not great this morning. Even more bad news. You have the Treasury Secretary said we're not buying any more Bitcoin. Even more bad news. And so you combine all those things together, it literally is a perfect storm. And that's why I think there is a massive, massive overreaction in the market. Now, the problem is we may stay in this trench for a little bit of time. And that's something you're just going to have to be okay with leading up to September 17th. Now, the ultimate downside to this is there's no rate cut September 17th. At that point, we will see lower prices. We will probably see Bitcoin to 110K or maybe down back to 112K. That is the only scenario that in which that occurs. Now, here's the thing, right? Is even if that does happen, look at the likelihoods of a definite rate cut in October. I mean, this is a month later, rate cuts in October, extremely likely. So, and this is, even far greater, and you're seeing even greater in December. So if things play out properly, there could be some great opportunities. This could be the dip that you're waiting on. We could dip a little bit lower. We could go down to 116K. But I think in the end, if you DCA your way down, you're not over leveraged, could be some good buying opportunities. Now, here's the big thing for tomorrow. I think I don't know how big of a role this is going to play in the price of crypto and the price of Bitcoin specifically. But Trump is meeting with Putin in Alaska, which I thought was really funny considering the fact that the U.S. bought Alaska from Russia, I think back in the 50s. Or maybe it was a little bit longer. It's been a while. I haven't done history in a long time. But I think this is absolutely funny, right? Of all places, they're meeting in Alaska, which obviously has ties back to Russia, and the U.S. buying it from Russia, probably one of the worst decisions that Russia's ever made. But, this whole Ukraine war situation, meeting between Vladimir and Trump, has some potential. And I think if I don't think there's going to be a negative in the market if a deal doesn't come through. I think there could be a very good positive pump in the market. I don't know. It's not going to be the degree that we are seeing with rate cuts, but I think there could be a slight pump in the markets if there is a deal that gets made. I don't know why the Guardian. There you go. So Putin to offer. This is the first that this has happened. Putin to offer financial incentives to Trump at the Ukraine summit. So there has been conversation as far as giving up some land that Russia already has control over in a compromise, some potential economic opportunities. This is something that I think we're getting closer and closer to making a potential decision, but time will only tell, that time being tomorrow, as to how close we are. I don't think they're going to walk away shaking hands and signing a contract, but I think it's going to be a telltale sign of where things are. I think this is going to be the most positive meeting that they've had in ever, because especially when this has been hastily arranged based on Putin's request. Obviously, Trump had threatened Putin with some tariffs and some more sanctions. So obviously, this is something that Putin wanted to get done. And I think this plays in a positive aspect for both Ukraine and for the U.S. and all of Europe. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out. I think this could be a good plus, could be a good win, and I think we could maybe see a slight recovery in the crypto market. But in the end, let me know your thoughts down below. Do we see a rate cut? I mean, we're at 92%, 92 freaking percent. Is there a possibility of no rate cut in September? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like. Enjoy content like this, consider subscribing. Until next time, guys, stay invested.